Hi everyone, welcome to Mediation and Beyond YouTube channel. Today I'm excited. I have an amazing colleague, Dr. Mitch Spero. He's a licensed psychologist out of Florida. He's many credentials, but I'm going to fit in as much as I can here. He's an author, a speaker. He's director of child and family psychologist in Florida. He's been on numerous boards of psychology and universities. He's noted for his work with children, bullying, ADHD, custody evaluations, disabled and challenged kids, step families, divorce. He's noted for doing the custody evaluation in 2000 for the Elian Gonzalez case. That was an international custody and immigration case. And that was he did that pro bono. So I'm really happy to have him join us today. But before we get started, now would be the time to hit below and subscribe to our channel here so that you can see what's upcoming, because I am sure I will be having Dr. Mitch back. And thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate it, and I'm excited to have a conversation with you. How are you?
Excellent. One small correction. It wasn't really a custody eval because his mother and stepfather had actually drowned.
Are you talking about the Elian Gonzalez?
Elian Gonzalez.
Okay.
A number of psychologists were concerned when they called it custody, but it's truly immigration. The mom and the stepdad had drowned and the dad was in Cuba.
Right.
So it was a very mixed type of situation that the media really jumped on. When psychologists in Miami would ask me, because I'm Hungarian and Romanian, not literally fluent, I'm bilingual to Spanglish, as I would call it.
Mm-hmm.
I would hand them the live international speech, have them read it, and then if there were questions or concerns, I did all of the testing other than the IQ test, where I had somebody that was from Cuba that did that. So I don't want it mixed with custody, but yes, I've established a reputation with some very intense custody matters. As far as my infomercial, I get to do this for literally 3 seconds. That's Child and Family Psychologists. The group is right by Sawgrass Mills Mall.
You're talking in Florida because you're going to have obviously a group that doesn't know the area.
That's the info on that book, the other, and the two. And the only thing I'd like to say on that is it's Educavision, EDUCAVISION, and their email is educa@aol.com if you're interested in any of my books or children's games.
Well,
I'm
happy to put all that down in the details, and then people can go and read about it at the end for sure. And then they can have a way to contact you, and we'll do that at the end. So thank you for that.
Okay, we're ready.
Yes, we are ready. So thank you for coming on. I really wanted to kind of take your expertise. So a lot of the work I do as a divorce mediator, and I always say recovered therapist, and life coach and former teacher. I really would like to talk about children surrounding conflict that can come in a marriage, or it can come in a divorce, or it can just come in relationships among in a school system. But you have a breadth of connection and working with children, like I said in your introduction, with disabled and challenged kids and bullying, which I know you have a big interest in as well. But can you speak to the impact of conflict on children?
Well, I think the first thing is, when we say children, we have to remember that they're all different age children. And a child that's 2 to maybe 5 years old developmentally doesn't think the same way that the child is 9 or 10 or 15 or 16. Divorce for a very, very young child is something that they learn as just part of their life. And they go back and forth. For example, I put a little doll on the back of my turtle, Florida the turtle, and he carried the little doll into 2 different castles that we made with blocks. It was the very first time she understood mommy was going to have a house, daddy was going to have a house, and she was going to go back and forth, that they both loved her, but she would see them separately. So I think the first thing is remembering that not all kids are alike, even kids that are brothers and sisters. And second, that the youngest children don't have an understanding. There are a number of books out. One is Dinosaurs Divorce, and in the beginning, it has a lot of the definitions of words. In my books, I put 1,000 feeling words in the back of each book. I think we have to teach kids the actual vocabulary so they understand if one person says custody or time sharing or those kind of things, because it's so confusing. These are brand new words and it's a brand new life for them. And it's starting because of the death of the marriage of their parents. And parents don't always take the time to answer the questions that the child asks. So I think one of the key factors is that kids are going to be sad. They don't completely understand the process. They hear parents argue, but they don't hear them make up. And now their world has changed forever. When they get married, their mom or dad may be married to somebody else. There was somebody on the internet said she hadn't seen her ex in 10 years. And he said, is it Miss or Mrs.? And she said, no, it's Doctor. I thought that was great. So for some people, it opens up other opportunities. And for others, it's the death of a marriage, the loss of the concept of happiness into old age, and the bitterness that eats away at us gradually. So one of the keys is definitely having the communication with your children along the way, not telling them too much. It's like when a child asks where the baby come from, you say they come from mommy's belly. When a child asks the next question, yeah, mommy goes to the hospital, the doctor takes it out. You don't go into all of the depth. And I think it's the same with a divorce, a relocation, anything that's major, that the child is able to ask the parent comfortably, ideally with both parents together in the beginning. I always recommend the day that the child is told that both parents are there in the same room, all of the kids or whoever is there in the home at that point, and that they stop and listen. And I think the key is recognizing that it's not wrong to seek professional help of a licensed mental health professional, a life coach, a psychologist, to prevent some of what can have long-lasting effects, almost like a post-traumatic stress disorder or a major depressive episode. I really reinforce the key is at a time when communication is at its worst and anger is at its highest, the children are paramount. Their needs are paramount, and we have to really listen, bring them to a professional that can help them speak and pull them out of the middle.
So you said, parents don't always listen. I think from my experience personally and professionally has been that parents have to ask questions as well. Like if your child is silent, that doesn't mean that everything's okay. Like if they're not talking about it, that doesn't mean that they're fine with it. And I think parents make a big mistake on that one. I think a lot of times children don't talk about it because they don't want to upset either parent, or ask if they know mommy's mad at daddy, they're not going to go then ask mommy questions about daddy or speak to their feelings like I miss daddy when mom's mad at him, right? So I think that's really important. So how would you suggest that, like a parent who thinks that their child is okay because they haven't really asked any questions or talked about anything in terms of after they were told about the divorce, what are your thoughts on bringing it up?
I think there should almost be what we call like the family dinner, where a kid knows that that's the time where whoever is in the household, or they're all sitting down together. They don't have to start immediately. They can have the meal with gradual conversation. But afterward, before getting up from the dining room table, which with old-fashioned values was, may I please be excused from dinner table so I can walk the dog, right. Kind of going back to old-fashioned times, knowing that that's the family time to talk. Ideally, that mother and father are both there. And when one parent says something about the other parent, I teach the children to say, that's my mommy, please don't say that. Or that's my daddy, please don't say that. And to never use the kid as a messenger. Tell your mom that, or tell your dad that. Don't have them bring envelopes back and forth. Put their needs and their concerns first. Now, specifically addressing the quiet child, as a psychologist, some of my worst cases in my entire career have been the kids that the guidance counselors picked out and said, that little girl came from New York and she sits in the back of the class. She doesn't have selective or elective mutism, but she's always sad. Well, a lot of times kids are afraid to say anything. They're afraid they'll get the parent in trouble, or they're afraid at some level that they're going to learn things that they don't want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, some kids are going to be extremely emotional, which needs to be completely addressed. And the ones that are totally silent are rationalizing and almost pushing things under the carpet, so to speak. And as professionals, we know that if you push it under the carpet, it's not going to go away. If you really process it and work it through, then even the most quiet child will be able to ask certain questions with confidence.
So let's pretend mom and dad aren't in the house. You're still saying, I mean, they could be separated, right? They're not in the house to have those ongoing conversations. You would say to either parent, so dad could have the kids over on, a Tuesday evening and it's his night and they're having, they're making pancakes for dinner. He could sit around and say, I'm checking in with you guys. How are things going? How are you doing with your divorce? How are you doing going back and forth, right?
It's always a good question to ask the kid, hey, how am I doing? Is there anything that I could be doing better as your mom or as your dad that way?
That's a great point.
And I think that if people are in separate households these days, we can do a Zoom and put, if the kids are with mom or the kids are with dad, the other parent in the same screen, and still have a 5 or 10 minute conversation. Not all of these things need to go for 20 minutes to an hour.
I would say less is more.
Tolerances are 5 to 10 minutes, and that's it. They're on overload.
Right. And so what are some things like for parents to look for, kind of like red flags for parents to look for if, after you've told your children that kind of stuff, what are some things for them to kind of look at as might be potential problems? Do the kids all have to swing to the left and then my kid's out of control? I had a quiet child, now they're the extreme, or can they be too quiet? Is there anything in particular?
My attorney said, stay away from the controversial issues. So if you're talking left and right, I don't know if I can address that one, but no, seriously, if we're talking about what's most common, it's the parents not knowing that the child may be internalizing or blaming themselves for the divorce, because one of the issues is quite often different styles of parenting. One may be much easier than the other. One may be very strict in enforcing certain guidelines with school. I think the key there is that, well, a strange example, but a little girl many years ago knocked over one of those standing lamps. At the time, mom and dad argued. Dad was a biker, really good dad, but the lamp crashed, the light bulb broke, the shade broke. She knocked it over. Dad went outside, got on his motorcycle, drove off, and was never seen again. I saw her years later. She had been harboring self-blame, and she said to me, without the other parent in the room, if I never knocked over that lamp, Daddy would still be here. That's sad. So I think the key is really with all children, telling them that divorce is something that happens between two married people that were very much in love at one point in time. People can grow together or they can grow apart, but that the child will always have both of their parents as much as they need, as much as they ask.
And so now,
with Richard Gardner, remember the whole thing about parental alienation?
Oh,
I think we should cover a little bit of that later, but I just want to bring that up now.
So now you have, like, you're more in the pandemic down in Florida than I am in Connecticut here. We've kind of flattened our curve. You're doing your thing. So some of the bigger issues earlier on were about co-parenting. When parents are out of the house, they could just be separated and or they could be divorced, but about coming to agreements on whether or not the children should even be going back and forth during COVID, and legally they had to. I mean, that was really the essence of what everybody said. But now now it's July, now people are talking about the school year. So what are parents to do when they can't even decide and agree on whether the child should be going back to school or not, and saying it's a possibility during COVID? How do you help parents come to these, what are some tips we can give parents to come to a consensus on agreements post-divorce or post-separation for, like,
Okay.
I'm using schooling with COVID as an example.
I think that the child, male or female, young or old, has to recognize that both parents should come to an agreement rather than one parent overruling the other in those types of decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Second, that they should not be a part of that discussion. They should speak with either parent first, and then the parents need to work that out without the child present so that they don't take sides or align with one parent against the other in that way. Salvador Minuchin called it splitting, and it's literally when a child will gravitate more toward one parent or the other.
But we don't put the decision making, you don't go to little Johnny in the 4th grade and say, Johnny, do you want to go to school?
Right.
Do you want to go back and forth to mommy's? Like, you don't ask the child, right?
No, you have the child express what they feel they need to, and then you look at the facts and all of that. But it has been an issue during the pandemic with kids going back and forth to either parent, and sometimes one of the parents involves the child with their friends or their coworkers or their relatives. And the children become afraid because the other parent doesn't leave the house. They're very aware, and they're wearing their masks, and they're wearing their gloves, and they're using the hand sanitizer. And then they go over the other parent's household, and sometimes none of that is occurring. It's very confusing to them. Then they become afraid because they're saying, that's my mommy or daddy, I love them, but I'm afraid to be there. So they start to question the other parent's judgment. Now in Florida, the courts were closed for an extended period of time. I did expert witness work on Zoom for the first time in my career, but a lot of parents use that to their advantage. And they said, well, I'll do what I want. Now, one thing I strongly recommend, and I'm not violating confidential, what's the word, a copyright law or anything like that. We have one that's called Talking Parents down here in Florida, and the other is the Family Wizard. The parents are to email each other any concerns about the children, and it should be only used for that purpose. The key is a parent can't say something nasty to the other parent and then have them either delete it or change it. It becomes permanent record for the court.
Right.
And
they got that here
I
too.
always suggest mediation and therapy long before going to court.
Right. No, that's a good point. So you're saying the parents need to come to a consensus together, and if they need to use a mediator or therapist or somebody to help navigate that conversation so that they are on the same page.
Even without the COVID-19. Exactly. Even without the COVID-19, there's an issue of, where is our child going to go to middle school? Are they going to be registered at your house or my house? I helped as a psychologist when I never used the word visitation. You don't visit a parent. You don't go over to their house. You literally have two households, even though you may spend more time in one. And the child has to have their own niche, their own space in both households, and their own special things and toys. Some go back and forth with them, but a lot remain in one location, or they may have two, whether it's a football, a bicycle, a laptop. There's certain things that the parents have to agree on that they will have the children bring back or forth, or some that they won't. But I think the key, again, is education, medical decisions, extremely important. Something such as dental, vision, psychological, tutoring, anything that the child's going to get additional attention, both of the parents can communicate on email so that they're not arguing, and inform the other parent of their preference, and then involving a professional to help them to learn to compromise at certain times, at one of the worst times of their lives.
And you would have had to communicate all that had you been together anyways. Like, you have to communicate even if you stay in the marriage. You're not always going to agree on parenting in a marriage. So whether you're separated, divorced, or married, you still come across the same issues. Because you might not have had the similar parenting styles. You might not agree on, the hand sanitizer or the mask or whatever it's going to be. Like, that may have been an issue whether you're divorced or not. So it's a good point about the effective communication, and would have had to learn that in the marriage anyways. So, right. Or one person will say, well, I would have just done what my husband wanted, or I would have done just what my wife wanted. Now I can do what I want. But the reality is you have to communicate on what the best interest of the child is, right? No matter what age
Always.
of the child.
Always. And accept that the children are experiencing a myriad of emotions that maybe they've never had before. Maybe they never really worried. And I explained to parents that, with a little humor, dumb kids don't worry, smart ones do. So your kid's smart and they're worried. Now let's address it.
Right.
And I think the key is the worry, the guilt, the confusion, the fear, all of that has to be able to come to the surface with both parents.
Yeah, and you mentioned parental alienation earlier, which is really a whole show and topic in and of itself. But for those individuals who don't know what the terms even mean, can you just address that a little bit?
Richard Gardner, a psychiatrist from New Jersey, created a game, the Talking, Feeling, Doing game, was world famous for what he had done in the court system when he spoke of how one parent will align with the child against the other parent, telling them all of the horrible things they possibly can. So at that point, the child is resistant to going to that other parent and their parents or their relatives. And it's almost as though they're afraid of losing the love of the parent that's convinced them the other parent is evil. So they align with the aggressor. The individual, male or female, that's saying negative things about the other parent is confusing the child.
Mm-hmm.
It's better that you say, ask mom or ask dad. But in court situations, some individuals have been taught, pull every string you can. And in some cases, they bring up some pretty old, dirty material that has nothing to do with the kid, because things happened maybe right after college or early in career, maybe even before they were married or with family members. And all of a sudden this kid knows things and you go, how do you know that? And that's not exactly how it happened. That's your mother's view of it, or that's your father's view.
Right.
So Richard Gardner woke the court up in a sense that sometimes when a child is so strongly attached to one parent and so angry with the other, that we need to bring in mental health professionals to help evaluate that. So a court-ordered psychological evaluation that's specifically dealing with custody needs will bring that to the surface. And I rely on my data more than what people say. I do 10 to 12 hours of testing. I interpret it. I might put part of a letter in that a parent writes or a child writes, so they're able to speak directly to the court without having to say something. And then I rely on the data. And it does come through when a child is being manipulated, even if they're not aware of it.
And when you say rely on the data, that's the information you got, but you remain neutral. You're not working for one side or the other. It's just you're fact finding for the child.
I can't magnify that enough that I actually hold up a chart and I say to the kid with both parents there, your name is on this chart and you are my patient or my client and I'm here for you. I'm not on mom's side. I'm not on dad's side. I'm on your side. And I'm going to recommend to the court, or I'm going to help you with whatever issues. But remember, mom or dad might think at certain times that I'm leaning in their direction. It's kind of like being in a canoe. If you lean too far to one side, but then you lean back to the other and help each parent be understood, liked, and respected. So I think the key in that aspect is really letting the child know that you're not affected because mommy brought them in for therapy or daddy brought them in, that you want the other parent to come in, even if it's separate. I literally hand them the child's chart and I give them a new intake. And I say, you may not agree with some of the things that your child's mother or father said on the intake. Will you fill it out? Use a different colored pen so I can differentiate. Right. You sign all of the forms. And I show the child that even if the other parent's not in therapy, I want their opinion and I need to hear their point of view just as much.
And what are some, I imagine parental alienation is, it can probably be very right in front of you, like right smack in your face. And I'm sure others are more subtle.
Yes.
So can you share, I think, so when it's right in front of your face, I think kind of it can be obvious, maybe not to the person who's trying to do the alienation, but I think to everybody else it is. But what are some more subtle things that you might notice where a parent's not even thinking that they're alienating a child? Because I don't think all alienators even believe they're alienating their children. I don't. I think they think they're doing the right thing by their children. But what are some subtleties that someone might, so someone was listening to this, they might, after hearing you, they might think, wow, I do that. Maybe I should, you know, you do keep your fingers, maybe I should relook at myself here. What are some subtle things?
Something as small as homework time, bedtime, morning routines. What I try and do is set up behavior mod schedules like a token economy system with each parent having the same schedule in their own household. So in the morning, we don't want to start with anger. So we have different behaviors listed that the child receives a certain number of points or chips in both households.
Okay.
Sometimes a parent will say, well, your father doesn't help you with homework, I do. Or your mom doesn't help you with homework, I'm the one that does it. Without meaning to be offensive to the other parent, they are influencing the child's view of, well, you're right, it's much easier to be there. They don't make me do the homework. Okay, another is medication. Years ago, a mother was telling the child, don't swallow that pill. It was a psychostimulant for ADHD. And she said, and I want you to act out and get in as much trouble as you can in school so that the judge will see that your daddy can't handle you and that you have to live with mommy. Boy, did that backfire. So I guess the key is always looking medically, psychologically, emotionally, as well as fun things. Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, that the child knows that when they have scouting, they're with one parent. When they have gymnastics or karate, they might be with the other parent, and some activities might occur for both parents, and they can both be present, hopefully sit next to each other so the child doesn't have to finish a type of performance or testing, whether it's musical or physical, and look one direction or then look the other direction.
Right. Right. No, I think there's calming and peace for a child to know, okay, my parents are there together. Like that's, you know, these parents who have separate birthday parties all the time. And I'm always like, couldn't you just have a birthday party where you can all just share a couple of hours together rather than make the child have two different parties? You know, some kids go to one, some kids go to the other. I think it's hard for parents to be friends of that, you know, because which birthday you're going to go, like it becomes complicated even for the extended people, never mind the family.
I know it's a little silly, but I'm the one that'll say it's your birthday weekend or it's your birthday week. Bringing two families together for a child can bring about more anxiety than lessening the anxiety sometimes, because it's a question of, if there is a step parent, does the step parent attend the party?
Mm-hmm.
If there are grandparents, aunts and uncles that love the child very much, do they not go to the party? So I think in some cases, early on, it may be more common to share certain events and holidays, but later on, even the way that it's celebrated might be different. So it's, again, the parents really putting the child's needs as paramount before their own, and learning to respect the other parent's wishes, even if they don't agree.
I think that's the key, right? Putting the child ahead of their own. And I've heard a lot of parents who will say, well, I was divorced. That's the way I came from a divorced home. I did just fine. And I'll say, but your child's not you. Like your child isn't a mini you, and that doesn't mean they're going to experience divorce in the same way that you did. So
exactly. They might
right.
be talking about times before we had computers, before we had the internet, when all phones had cords and bicycles were allowed out up until a certain time. The world's a different world. I try and help parents to see that what kids are experiencing in middle school, we might have had to have decided in high school if it was something we were willing to consider. And what they're experiencing in high school is what we maybe had to deal with in college or beyond. The problem is they're not emotionally equipped yet. And that's why we have driving ages and voting ages, military, certain age requirements, because a child is not prepared to make certain decisions in that way.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I think it's a much faster paced world. And when you're talking about internet, I know that you have had things with bullying. And so to me, so let's say you have a child who's been divorced where you already now you have some trauma from that, because I think that's traumatic. And then they're experiencing school and or even not in school, just on Facebook and all these chats and everything else where kids can be bullied. It's almost this kind of double whammy, double trauma, right? And there really isn't a best way to handle that. I've seen young boys who've kind of reclused into if they're not fitting in at school, they're on their video games all the time, and their parents got divorced, then they crawl into the video world where they don't have to deal with the social anxiety from school, right? And so it becomes, again, like double traumas. It creates more problems than I think I know I had to deal with growing up.
Well, this is not enough exercise. I'm third-degree black belt in Taekwondo. I told my son many years ago that there was no chance of him dropping out of karate. He could graduate with a first-degree black belt. And then we would do baseball or scouts or any other activity, soccer, but that he was going to graduate or finish that. I think so many kids don't get enough exercise. They don't sleep well enough. The guidelines in each home are different. It's healthy if the kid uses an iPad or a laptop to say, when you're playing your games, I'd like you to be at the kitchen table or the dining room table so that I just know what you're doing on computer. Other kids close their doors and they do things that are totally age inappropriate and they end up very confused. I think having the same rules in each household is essential. And some of the guidelines are not that difficult. You don't get up at 2 a.m. and start playing a computer game. Sometimes for a teenager, I'm charging your phone, but I'm charging it in the kitchen. The kids are communicating to friends 2, 3, 4 in the morning and then required to get up and be in school by 7. So I think it's really understanding, not accusing, listening, and recognizing that these kids are dealing with so much more at such a younger age. It's not just drugs, sex, and rock and roll in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
Now they're dealing with all these issues of identity confusion and illness, COVID-19, social isolation, hand washing, whether a parent is considered to be neurotic or safe. And I think kids have to learn to love and respect each parent, even when they know they don't completely agree with some of their philosophies or views.
Even when the other parent doesn't agree with the other parent's views or philosophies, but the respect has to be there.
I consider the mutual respect to be essential, even when there's a level of anger, frustration, dislike, times of affairs, times of infidelity on all different levels, money situations, family dynamics, parents, relocations. They bring about anger because somebody that you're no longer married to still believes they have total control. And if we can take that away and not have the parent upset the child and have them truly feel as though they're in the middle, that one parent might say, as soon as you get home from school, that's when you do your homework. Well, I don't consider that effective. I think a kid needs to go out and play like we did when we were young.
Right.
Got on our bicycle, went out with friends, played football, did things that really got the energy out after being in school for that many hours. Another parent might say, no, you're going to finish your homework before dinner, so after dinner we can relax and play. I think the key is not pushing a child beyond what they believe their capabilities are with time. 15 minutes of homework, then a 5-minute break. 15 minutes of homework, 5-minute break. All right, now we're done for now. Let's go have dinner. Let's play a game afterward. Then let's finish the homework. They're all different ways of doing this. But the key is not having a child like being at one parent's home more because they get away with more and they can have more fun and they can stay out later because it's a different curfew and they can associate with other friends. Or if they're driving age, one parent lets them put 3 other kids in the car. The other says you can't have anybody in your car.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that go on. And I'm sorry to say they don't end when a child turns 18. You can't rent a car till you're 25. So here we are letting 19-year-old kids make the most major decisions in their lives. I think that they need mentors, parents, teachers, coaches. From gymnastics, I was at University of Pittsburgh. My dad was a gymnast, Hungarian. My mom taught ballet, Romanian, and it was just part of my blood. It was something that I was directed towards.
Mm-hmm.
When we would have a meet, my father never missed a gymnastics meet. I am so proud that my friends that I met at international gymnastics camps still think positively of my father that way. It's not that they don't remember my mom. She was at most of them,
Mm-hmm.
but he was at all of them. And I think those are the keys, that you recognize certain events. One parent may take more of an interest, another parent may not, but it's recognizing the morals, values, ethics. I tell my kids, I'm not forcing education on you. You have a choice of any doctoral degree you choose.
There you go. You can get it from anywhere, but you're getting the doctorate.
My daughter has a doctorate in physical therapy, a DPT, and I'm very proud of my son. His aspirations are either anesthesiology or even psychiatry. He's still forming his identity in that sense, and I want him to have the time to really be sure.
Yeah, well, those are big decisions. I mean, you know, but also you can get a doctorate in one and you can have a change of career. Like you're allowed to do that. And so, because your interests may ebb and flow.
After 10 years of doing custody evals, it was in the hallway where a judge said to the family, if you guys can't decide on the schedule over the winter break in the hallway, I'm putting both of you in jail overnight. So we went out in the hallway and I talked to both parents. The father was a firefighter, very respected, very well known, very proud. And all he wanted was, when I'm not at the fire station overnight, I'd like to have the kids with me because I do the homework mostly. The mom came from an ethnic family where her sisters probably would have hung her out to dry if the father had custody. So I said, let's put it in a different level. When dad's not at work, you're okay with him helping with homework and all of that. But mom really needs the term. That way her family will feel comfortable. So she ended up being the, quote, primary residential parent. And dad had to accept, yeah, she gets the title, but we live close enough that the kids will go to the same schools. And he got the time that he wanted.
Well, that's the essence.
Into the courtroom, it settled.
Yeah, but you're not sticking with labels, right? I mean, that's the point. Get away from the.
It was 10 years after doing custody evals. That was a turning point when I said, I'm going back to school to become a certified family law mediator by the Supreme Court of Florida to keep parents out of court and to keep the kids from going through this trauma.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, divorce is, I always say it's messy. There's no way around it. Messy with feelings and financial things and scary and unraveling our lives, but you're not divorcing the children. You're just divorcing one another, right? There's only one mom, one daddy. That doesn't change. I don't, and it's just an unraveling of kind of a business deal, so to speak. The emotional piece is separate. That has nothing to do with kind of just the data, right? The data of the divorce, which is your finances and setting up a parenting agreement and those kinds of things, and trying to deal with your emotions. That has to take place elsewhere. I think
Exactly.
everybody needs to see somebody. I actually wish it was a little more mandatory, where you need to see somebody for a good 6 months after you divorce to make sure it's all going smoothly and to make sure that you're in check. Even if your ex is.
50%. Exactly. 50% of the marriages in America, years ago, statistics were showing ended up in divorce. The first marriage. 60% of the second marriages were ending up in divorce, sometimes because people would choose the opposite of their ex or somebody that was like their ex and try and improve them that way. So I think in Florida, it's required that there's a course, a 4-hour course that's online that you have to take and have a certificate before you're permitted to go before the judge. Even if it's...
Oh, are you talking about for
content.
remarrying?
No.
Oh, for
to
divorce.
actually become divorced. Now, when we have kids, they don't give us the handbook at the hospital. When you go through a divorce, they don't literally give you the handbook. So I can't agree with you more that if it was court mandated that after each divorce, there were a set number of visits, but the professional could say, you guys really don't need to be here, but I'm here for you if you ever need me.
Yep.
And you can do what Dr. Nicholas Cummings said, brief intermittent psychotherapy throughout the life cycle. Where there are other major changes, it's okay to come back. I'll still be here for you. But the key is going for psychotherapy, whether it's family therapy or individual, truly is a learning experience, a growth experience, and learning to understand the other person's point of view with a neutral party present that is going to help each to better understand what's most important to them.
Right.
And if people lose the stigma that going to a doctor, going to a mental health counselor, talking to a coach is weakness, then they've lost the whole concept of learning. And we can always learn from everybody that we deal with. I think of it as I learn something from every child, every adult that I work with, whether they were on federal or state probation, they've made changes. If it's a child, I learn what it's like to be a child at their school, or different things that I've never heard of. I'm not afraid to ask, what does that mean? I've never heard that expression. And they like that because the amount we still have to learn is endless. And if we teach the kids that, they learn to ask the right questions.
Well, plus you're really listening and seeing them. And I think a lot of times in families, not mean in a mean-spirited way, but I think we get so busy, we don't really take the time to really listen and see our children, right? Because we're busy.
If the court was to research and put a list together of those that truly have an internship during their doctoral program, 2,000 hours, a residency of 2,000 hours, that's at least half child, adolescent, and family, then those individuals are going to be more adequately equipped with tools that will say, if it's court ordered for a set number of visits, and I'm not talking months and months and months, but maybe depending on the circumstances, you're either category A, B, or C, and if things are more severe or more conflicts, maybe there might be 12 sessions. If things seem very easy, even 4 to 6. But I think that if the child realizes that once a week, mommy and daddy will both be there, the doctor or coach may ask mommy or daddy to step out of the room for part of it, but there's somebody there that is going to help them avoid different pitfalls and traumas that can last a lifetime.
Well, plus that's a team effort, right? That even though the families, the marriage is unraveled and the family's changed, that's a team effort coming together and how we doing, checking in, how, and it shows, I think it says so much to a child when you see two parents who have divorced, and I've seen this when I always get amazed, like, wow. And I've said to a couple of my friends, it's like, you're really great co-parents. Like, you're doing a great job as parents, even though your marriage didn't work. One of them wants to bring the child to a therapist and the other goes. You don't fight the one saying, I don't think she or he needs to go. You just go because that other parent might believe that they need support in that way. And you showing up as the ex is so supportive. And what it says to the children to know that both parents are still supporting each other, even though they're not married. It's like, talk about modeling a healthy relationship.
Exactly.
Right?
What would happen if the court system truly listened and the mental health professionals were able to emphasize this to the courts, and a final divorce could not be granted until a certificate of completion occurred of the co-parenting, not just an online class, that the parents may need time even with the child or children not in the room, and that a divorce will not be rubber stamped and finalized until some of the issues that may not be easily talked about in the future are addressed, recorded in a file, put away, kept for 7 years, and basically knowing that this could be a way of putting out a spot fire in the future. So I think if counseling, therapy, coaching is looked at more as a sign of strength than weakness, and if it was required before the divorce is granted, it may even surprise you, but some of the divorces might be delayed or even eliminated once some of the issues could be resolved.
Oh, absolutely. I actually don't think that when you're unraveling your family, that's more of it needs an emotional holding ground, not a courtroom. Like, family court is an oxymoron to me. They don't even belong together. Like, I think for your assets and stuff, you want to make sure everyone's protected, and obviously for a parenting plan, but there's room for attorneys. I'm not knocking attorneys, but for sure, the attorney isn't the one who really needs to help you unravel. That comes from an emotional place, right? Not just the legal aspect of it. And I think that's where, like, yourself was a mediator, I'm a mediator, and then you have mental health training. It makes all the difference. And that I would, we talk about changing the culture of divorce. That's definitely an area where I wish it was more mandatory, that you had to go through something to say, okay, everybody's in a good space. This family, go ahead and grant their divorce.
If you've never been divorced, you don't know how to. There are many areas you can learn, and you don't have to be angry or insecure or feel worried about that process. And it may be the only space that either parent ever has that somebody's truly neutral, open-minded, and not pushing their own impression as a parent or an uncle or a grandparent. And they may decide, well, let's live separately for a period of time and see if this is possible. Can we still, I can keep you on my health insurance, we can still have certain investments and learn together. But sometimes it does make sense for parents to separate prior to actually a formal divorce.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And have that trial period.
I say, don't do anything until the ink is dry on that divorce, and don't make any major decisions if you can hold off until you're really emotionally ready.
Well, when people come in Connecticut, like, they'll come and they'll file for a separation, divorce is a separation. So they'll file, and then I'll say, now let's do the parenting plan. And then you have to wait 3 months anyways, typically. And so let's see how it plays out. Is it even functional? Like, you can iron out so many things. You can really see how this would be. And, your assets, will get to that later. But that parenting piece to me is like, that's the most important piece, because you have to live with that. Right? And so it's a good time to tweak it is in those 90 days and see how it works. And even if you want to do it that way, if you want to live like that.
Okay, well, if you're running, I'll vote for you.
Yeah. Thank you. So in wrapping this up, Dr. Mitch, in a nutshell, people getting
You
divorced.
can't say that when we're talking about psychology.
In a nutshell.
You just can't say that. I mean, come on, a nutshell. I got a box of assorted nuts from a psychiatric hospital as a holiday gift with a plant one year.
Oh
And
my
I said,
gosh.
somebody in the marketing department may have been moved to a different department. We'll get assorted nuts as psychologists, and
That's a
plants
great.
are healthy.
Yeah.
So
All
both
nuts
of us
are
are in
healthy.
a nutshell.
Right, in a nutshell. Helping parents help their children, you would say, do it, talk to your kids together, right? Open the dialogue up no matter what age they are. Don't give them too much too soon, right? Age appropriate, right?
Exactly.
And in terms of like watching for parents who are kind of alienating things, just really saying, if you lead with kindness about each parent, you should really have no problem. Right?
Absolutely. And I think, well, the old serenity prayer is extremely important. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Don't sweat the small stuff. Most importantly, maintain a sense of humor. The way we were kidding around.
Good
It
point.
lightens the emotions so much when somebody's so sad, if you can bring them to a point of a belly laugh.
Yes.
And I know that's difficult because you don't want to make a joke about something that's serious, but kids have to realize that if the teacher said, well, everybody in the room that's still with their original mommy and daddy raised their hand, there are a lot of kids in every classroom. Some parents never married, some married. Mother or father stopped seeing the other one before they were even born. Some are being raised by grandparents, aunts or uncles. Kids have to learn to accept that they're not alone, that other friends that maybe never told them have experienced some of what they have, even though they're differences. So no matter what our problem, whether it's an illness, whether it's some form of disability, anything whatsoever, it always helps to know that there are others that have already experienced what you're going to be experiencing. And I think of it as always seeking, like I said, coaches, athletics, mentors, and other individuals that won't laugh at what you say and will accept it. Okay, I think of it like a game of chess. If I go here and you go there and I go here, what am I going to do next? And teaching a kid to think that way with conversations. If I say this and they say that, what can I do there? And to learn, it's a horrible term, but anger management, temper control, knowing when it's time to walk away and calm down.
That's a really good point.
I ask parents to write. I ask kids to write. Bring it in. If there's something you really want me to know, write it down in the back of a notebook, not just on your phone, but write it down, bring it in, and we'll address that point by point.
That's good. And so really, not everyone's in Florida, obviously, but making sure that parents reach out and get help, not only for themselves individually, but collectively, and then reach out and get help for their kids.
And not feel insecure about it. And to watch something like this for some people might be difficult. Maybe they'll look at it in segments. If they look at it for 10 minutes, okay, that's a little overwhelming and it may bring about tears and sadness. Divorce is a type of death. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross taught us that there's a stage of an impact. There's the shock. There's, oh my gosh, what is this real? Then there's the denial. No, it's not really going to happen. We circle through anger and depression over and over, a preparatory type of acceptance, then bargaining. Even parents that are divorced will bargain with each other and readdress the issues before they come to the level of acceptance. And one of the keys in psychology is taking the theories of genius level individuals and blending them into your own theoretical framework to help people to grow together rather than grow apart.
That's a great way to put that. And divorce is like a death, but people survive death in terms of the impact of death, right? And we can grow from it and move forward, right? And I always say every time someone passes that I know or whatever, it definitely it makes you pause, makes you really look at life and yourself. And then of course you get in the hustle and bustle right back out there. But I think divorce, we have that opportunity to pause, do something different, and move forward.
I think if you don't take care of yourself as a helper, whether you're a medical doctor, a nurse, any other first responder at that level, developing new interests, maybe it's, as I did for 11 years of Taekwondo, doing that every single week and loving it. For me, it's playing guitar, sometimes with other people before the pandemic. Now it's just making sure that it's a part of my day. Spending time with animals. People that have pets think differently. We
It's true.
don't have animals just as an object. They're like a family member. And the kids sometimes need the love and support of their animals from each household that way. And not to forget nature, whether it's going to the beach, not at this time with the pandemic, but isolating at times where it's necessary, but being able to experience your own individual pleasures, such as photographing a sunset or watching a sunrise,
right,
or listening to music or driving. Every one of us has certain things that help us to feel that we're not stagnant, that it's okay to have boys' night out or girls' night out, even if you're married or divorced, that you still have your own friendship time, your own individual time, family of origin time, but that you take care of yourself and you teach your kids how to take care of themselves that way as well.
I think that's a great point to, I think that's a great point to leave on is, you know, self-care certainly makes you a better individual all around, never mind just in your family. But I think that's a great way to end this. And so, Dr. Mitch, how can people find you? How can they get in touch with you? I'll put it in the details in the write-up, but just for right now.
Literally, if that coming through, it's basically 954-587-7520. I have a YouTube channel that is Bullying and Bully Prevention, Stable Life. I can be found under Google as far as Dr. Mitch Spero, childandfamilypsychologist.org. But the easiest way is the old-fashioned way. Call me.
Okay.
I say wait till the afternoon or the evening because that's where most people need us. And again, it's 954-587-7520. We're called Child and Family Psychologists.
And you're located in Florida, correct?
Yes. And the books, again, are available through Educator. You can go directly to them. There are people that come down here as snowbirds. So even if they're down here for weeks or months, it's okay for them to come in. And now I think we both have to remind people that we do teletherapy. Most of what we do is online on Zoom or any other protected platform with confidentiality, and that we're available internationally.
Great. And so if people want to do teletherapy with you, that's doing like a Zoom like this is also an option for them, right?
Yes, as well as I have 15 associates that are all like family, and they wouldn't be here if I didn't like and respect them all. Right. My office staff, I have a wife at work, I have a sister at work. We're a family.
Okay.
And I think that if I can't handle something or if I'm not the most appropriate one, I always make a referral to one of the doctors or therapists that works with me that can handle the situation the best possible. Always bringing people in with different areas of specialization and working together, never feeling threatened, but feeling supportive.
That's nice. Thank you so much for coming on today. And everyone, listen, if you'd like to get in touch with Dr. Mitch, I'll write up the details. Just go into the details. You'll be able to get his contact information, his resources. I'll put his YouTube bullying channel down, Stable Life. And please make sure you subscribe and look for our next videos that'll be coming up. And I'm sure we'll be having Dr. Mitch on shortly. Thanks again.
Thank you. Let's also add one last thing. If they want something and they contact you directly, you'll do it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They can contact you, myself, but people will be in touch. And so we'll have all the contact information in the details. Thank you, Dr. Mitch. Really appreciate it coming on, taking the time to share your knowledge with us, and we'll talk soon.
This was our very first time, and I hope there are many more to follow. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we are looking for feedback. If there's something we could have done better, please call her, tell her, she'll tell me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.